Hey everybody, this is Hal Herring. I have got the Carrying the Fire podcast today. Thank you for being here. I am with a person I've gotten to know through my other podcast long ago, and that's Bjorn Dihle in Juneau, Alaska.
Yeah, I'm in Juneau. Thanks for having me, Hal.
You bet, man. I'm glad to see you back.
Yeah, good to be back.
This has been we've been talking back and forth trying to get this going.
Yeah.
The technological difficulties are sometimes they're not insurmountable though.
Yeah, no, I hear you, but we're here. So
we're here, man. I appreciate it. I wanted to let folks know we're going to talk. This is sort of part of a deep dive Alaska that I'm working on. And the Tongass National Forest is a place I've only been there twice, but one time I had a kind of transcendent trip there fishing for a Field and Stream series.
Mm-hmm.
And you've spent your life on the Tongass.
Yep.
And I want to introduce you, and then I want to introduce the listeners to the Tongass National Forest. So I appreciate your being here because I can't think of anybody better to do that.
Oh, thank you, Hal. But yeah, I'm a lifelong resident of Southeast Alaska, which most of Southeast Alaska is the Tongass National Forest. And my zone's kind of wedged between an archipelago full of brown bears and 1,500 square mile ice field. But that's northern Southeast Alaska. But Southeast Alaska is just super diverse. Every zone's different, from the southern Prince of Wales zone, which is famous, to the central islands like Mitkof, Kupernof, Huyu, and then you even have Yakutat in that zone further to the northwest. But the one commonality that we all share throughout Southeast Alaska, throughout the Tongass National Forest is, rain and salmon. Salmon's the foundation pretty much of everything here. It's the foundation of, my economy, which, commercial fishing, guiding, and our food. We eat lots of salmon and lots of Sitka black-tailed deer, and, also bear and goats, and, substitute it up a bit.
And when all this uproar over the government closing down the Forest Service research stations,
Mm-hmm.
You sent me that piece on the subsistence economy of Southeast Alaska, and it's $41 million a year that people take without no wages, just off like salmon berries, salmon, black bear, blacktails, Sitka.
That's equating the economic aspects of it, which is huge. You go in the villages especially, but even I live in a city. There's 30,000 people in Juneau. We're the city. But man, the cultural aspects of it, the Alaskan lifestyle aspects of it, that sharing part, that is the foundation of Southeast Alaska culture is wild foods, especially in these villages in real Southeast Alaska. And even here, it's like in Juneau, it's like we still share, still sharing wild foods is such an important part of this whole zone. We share a lot of food with each other.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about how you were born there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I got introduced to you. I can't remember whether it was through Backcountry Hunters or just reading your work at Outdoor Life.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading that extraordinary story about that serial killer abroad.
Oh, the Mad Trapper.
Yeah, the Mad Trapper.
Yeah.
And then I got acquainted with The Shape in the Dark, which is your bear book, and then Haunted Inside Passage, which I read for our last interview, and which disturbed me completely.
Well, yeah, it's Southeast Alaska is kind of a kiss or kill sort of place, and it's mysterious too. I'm not going to do the deep dive in it, but so many, right before I was waiting to get on and chat with you, I'm texting a biologist about these encounters that other biologists are having with, things up our big river systems, transboundary river systems, and which was kind of the zone where that Mad Trapper we talked about earlier was haunting. And it's just funny. It's not like that often that you're texting with employed ADF and G biologists, not about knowing wild animals. You're talking, about these biologists. You don't want to talk about like these weird encounters and whatnot. So it is. I think that's part of the reason, a very small part to me, but that adds to why Southeast Alaska, is so special, because they're still so wild. It's
Yeah.
still pound for pound. Some of these places are the wildest, most ecologically crazy places in our country. So
Yeah, I remember fishing there. We were actually trying to catch some sea run cutthroats, but I caught one tiny one. But we'd have to put the boat way out to sea and anchor, because the tide. By the time we got back, right, the tide was filling these rivers up and reversing their flow.
yeah.
I mean, this is something every day to you, right? But to me, I was just blown away by this.
The title.
I think it's dynamism and vibrancy there, that it's like explosive almost.
Oh yeah, it's so raw. I mean, it's so, we got landslides, and like, we have tidal flats that are 3 miles long. Yeah, and then, like last fall, I think our last trip to go get our crab pots, I think we had something like 4 inches of rain that day, and that was our day to go get our pots. We had to do it, and it was just crazy being out there, and all the dirt in the ocean coming off these streams and landslides. So yeah, it's just such a dynamic place. It's very much kiss or kill. It can be very bipolar, but you can have the most incredible outdoor experiences up here. And you
Yeah,
also can just like, it's pretty rare to have like a public land area that can like not only feed you, provide your like mental health and physical health with outdoor recreation, but also it's like, that's how we make our money. All our money
yeah,
is based, like throughout my whole life, is still, even though now I'm, doing more armchair stuff with contract work for different groups, bear viewing, helping develop bear viewing and stuff like that. So it's more time on the computer than I want, but it's still based in like having a healthy ecosystem.
yeah.
And that's, it's pretty incredible that we have that here. So,
Well, I want to when we wrap up, my notes here say, like, let's have a vision for the world for Southeast.
mhm.
But we'll work our way towards that, because I think there is another. Well, I don't think it's a new way to see things. I think it's coming around to an old way of seeing things.
Yeah, I agree.
But let's talk about. So you're raising your sons there with your wife.
Mhm.
Y'all are very much in place.
This is our
Um,
home, yeah.
and you have brothers, y'all hunted. I remember y'all were a hunting family, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think hunting is more, and I'm not, this isn't undercutting like the bond of the family. I think this is just showing how important hunting and food gathering is. But like I think our the foundation of our relationship, what keeps us close is that hunting and fishing. And like, if you try to explain that to someone who, like, I've like tried to explain it to like some friends who are no longer my friends because they hate hunting. I was trying to explain like that foundation and that
Yeah,
work, and now they don't talk to me anymore because they're vegans who live in Seattle, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think
that's
that's
right.
great. But that bond that you get from hunting, and for us it's like we I mean, I love hunting. It's probably one of my most favorite things. But I was thinking about it right before I hopped on. The grouse are hooting up in the hills, and so much of my youth was chasing these sooty grouse, and now it's just like the only reason I'd go sooty grouse hunting is to take my son, my
Yeah,
older son, and we did that last year, and he got his first. He was with me when we got the first bird that he was in on. It was great, but I don't have that desire to go do things beyond. I love hunting, but it's still like it's very much food oriented.
yeah,
It's like I want to get my 5-6 deer every year. I want to however much meat, and that's our bond is like one. The act of hunting makes you closer, but also that food And I think, the more I've thought about it, is the more just like kind of how just foundational to being human it is to go in the woods, to share food, share that experience, and yeah, share that life. So
And feed your family.
yeah, and then for me, yeah, I mean, it was bear last night. It's bear for breakfast after I talked to you, and
Yeah.
some people that's weird, like that's a weird thing. But man, I feel so much healthier if I eat that versus if I eat a tortilla with eggs and cheese. It's like for me, like that's real food, and it's worth it's invaluable and it's worth.
Yeah. You ever feel like it's taken from that land that you came from, that you're made of? Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
almost like a communion thing for me. It always has been, especially with elk.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
yeah, I mean, for me, it's Sitka black-tailed deer, and it's just like I remember, some of my earliest memories are just like my dad going hunting, coming back, the smell of the venison, and then that first time that I got to go hunting when I was 4 years old, where of course, I was not. We were, it was just like your dad took you out in the woods, and he had a gun, and you saw a deer track, and you saw the forest, and you saw the bear tracks, and you're just like, this place is amazing. And it takes like
yeah.
kind of decades before you realize how incredible it is of a place it is, and also just an opportunity it is to be able to have what these public lands offer. Like here, it's like the idea of like, it took going down south for me to be like really understand like how invaluable the Tongass is in Alaska's, incredible network of public lands, because I had never even in my mind thought about, hey, I can't go here to go in the woods. I can't camp here. I can't do this. I can't do that. And then all of a sudden, I'm down south and there's fences everywhere. I'm camping illegally everywhere.
Yep.
I finally get to a spot that seems like it's wilderness, and I'm, 8 miles back, and the pops a backcountry ranger, and they're like, "Do you have a permit for hiking here?" And I'm just like, it just, to me, at first I thought that was funny. Like, why
Yeah.
would you need a permit? But I'm so naive. I don't understand. I mean, I
Yeah.
still didn't understand, like, there's so much potential overuse. And I get there's all these management issues that we have to face, and a lot of them aren't fun. But for me, it was just like, and then the more I thought about it, the more disturbing, I guess, it became. And
Yeah.
then it's even more disturbing when I think of like what's going on currently with our public lands. Not I know you guys are getting hit too, but like what we're seeing up in Alaska is like some of my my favorite places, the places I want my kids to experience, are all kind of like, not being, the future doesn't look great for what's going on.
Right. Well, I think the short term future doesn't look great. But like we were talking about before we hit record, these people that are in power now are going for broke. Like this is the most shameless, you know, middle finger to the public, middle finger to the public comment period, middle finger to private public lands,
Yeah.
middle finger to the process of law.
Hmm.
Which, by the way, I don't know if anybody's reminded them, is what protects them and made them prosperous in this
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
I just don't understand. I don't understand it, but I don't have to. Like when Genghis Khan was attacking the village, you didn't really have to understand Genghis Khan's life history. Right,
Yeah.
you just had to know that they're knocking down the walls and they're
There's
stealing all the women, and
there's a
it's
real threat, and what's important too is, and is when we're thinking in that context, the next village needs to know that Genghis Khan isn't going to do anything different with it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think, you got to think in that context, like with this current administration, like we know what they're going to do. They showed their true self, in regard to public lands, and they're not going to stop
right,
until we stop them. And I do, it does give me a lot of hope with what I've been seeing, and it's like this can't persist, this sort of behavior.
right,
There's too many of us who care about our elk, about our deer, about our wild places, about our kids.
yeah,
And you can see that even in like these these joke of comment periods, when you look at like the rescinding of the roadless rule, 99.2% of people commenters wanted to keep the roadless rule in.
Right.
So it's like the government is not for the people. Like, that's a joke.
No, it's a smash and grab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like so that gives me heart in a way. It's like you can do a lot of terrible things, but ultimately you can't beat 99.2% of your population.
Well, I think also 20% of that, like I kept writing about. I've written about this since 2011, right? Since 2009, I think. And Travis Hall at Field and Stream has picked up on this. Like, he's working roadless rule stuff for Field and Stream so hard.
Oh, that dude's a great asset.
Travis, I don't know if anybody, I don't know anybody who's doing it as hard as Travis is doing it right now.
Yeah, he's got young kids. He's thinking.
Yeah, he does.
He's thinking about the future. He's not thinking about the money to be made for selling out. He's doing good work. So, and
he's living in the Bitterroot too. Right on the Bitterroot National Forest, Bitterroot Selway country. So it's like it's his yard as well, right? Yeah. It's his freedom, and his kids, mostly, like I said, for the next generation of people. Yeah. But one of the things he and I were talking about was taxpayers for common sense were one of the first people to come out for the roadless rule, right?
Yeah.
And the Tongass is the place where I saw y'all's figures, like $1.7 billion in losses. Yeah. on the timber cut and exported from the Tongass.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beyond smash and grab. This is like asking for somebody else to pay for you to break in.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I think, and the thing that was interesting for me growing up here and having friends in the timber industry and seeing it firsthand is that a lot of these folks thought, or it's like, I commercial fished for years, and you just kind of get lost in your own industry. Right. You get lost and you just like, this is the world you got to live in, so that you just do it. And then I think when you kind of take a step back years later, or once you realize, that fish run's gone or there's no more trees to be cut, you kind of be like, oh, geez, what was I doing? And then, so I think what's interesting there is, like, I know a number of ex-loggers who are for keeping the roadless rule, who would like to log again too. I know current loggers who have their own mills that are for keeping the roadless rule. Yeah. And I think one of the things that keeps hitting me is, like, we learn from our mistakes. And, even the Forest Service, like a lot of the people in the Forest Service, I know, like, they know the right path forward. And this administration has just kind of dropped a bomb on that. And, and they're still, like, the Forest Service is still, like, trying to do, they're working, like, it's their passion. A lot of these people, like, right. It's their life. Like, it's not like they want to shut down the timber industry, but they do want to do it in a way that doesn't hurt the Southeast Alaska lifestyle, other industries, and hunting and fishing and all that, and, right. And commercial fishing. And, like, there's a path forward on that, but it's not one that you can just drop a bomb on. It's one that is going to take a lot of collaboration and not always going to be, it's not as easy just as going in and just clear cutting the whole valley. It's like going to take a lot more effort. So it might actually cost less money, though. It might be more profitable in the long range. So
I think it'd be more profitable. I'm for a resurgence in small mill capacity all across the West. I mean, a lot of what happened to the beef industry with the consolidation into the 4 monopoly packers, and has happened to the timber industry, so that we can't even. There's no interest in a small sale on most national forests because there's nowhere to take the logs.
Yeah.
So all they want is, like, grand scale or nothing. It was like 1980s agriculture under Ronald Reagan. Was the agriculture secretary was Earl Butts. I'll never forget this. This is when I was grown, like I was in my 20s, right? And he said, "Get big or get out."
Yeah.
And like, how is that working for us when the thing during COVID, when the supply chains were so fragile,
Yeah,
with like, it's not get big or get out, it's get small and diversify and localize.
for sure. Take care of your
Um,
communities. That's just
okay,
take care of your communities.
because the macro is made of the micro.
Yeah,
I mean, and when you're working on the Walmart model, that's not going. They don't want that, right?
yeah,
They don't want somebody selling plumbing supplies down the road at a mom and pop store. That's taking money out of their bank account.
yeah,
And so it's all Walmart model where the profits are being made and then they're taken off somewhere else. And then you're left with the hollowed out storefront downtown
yeah,
or the destroyed salmon river
yeah,
or no blacktails, no Sitkas.
yeah. No food, no money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were headed in the right direction before this administration for sure, and it was really, and even it was really interesting to see the transition into the Trump administration with the different Forest Service workers, and so many of them with Doge, and what a bunch of people I know who were doing great work lost their jobs or just couldn't handle being in that environment, and then a number of them who stayed in are still trying to carry the right path forward.
Yeah.
For us, it's like focusing on young growth, harvest, and the real goal, which I think is going to have to be implemented because word on the street is like, a lot of these Alaska Native corporations that have a ton of young growth in their lands aren't interested in just having it be clear cut again. Like they want to do the right thing. They want to do the right path forward and log it in a way that can actually help wildlife habitat,
Oh
not
yeah.
just cut everything, but, do these be, cut in this way that would provide, wood for local mills. And Tongass, like we're just started to enter this period of like, man, we have so much young growth that could be commercially harvested. And it's like, yeah, why not? If it's already going to be subsidized some, if we got to pay a little bit more to do it in a way that could help wildlife, that would still benefit the locals 10 times more than,
Yeah.
not doing it that way. Like I know, some of these folks who are starting to do this, log restoration logging work in villages, and they had no work before that. And that these jobs changed their life. Like it's life changing. Like it's
Right.
the difference between a good life and a bad life. And having them have that work, those folks, versus bringing in mostly professional loggers or whatever from down south and doing these big clear cuts. It's night and day of what's the right way to go forward and what's the wrong way to go forward.
Yeah. And it's such, I mean, for me, I guess the outcome was sometime I didn't necessarily like it, but I just loved falling timber. I loved working in the woods. It was my thing, and
Yeah,
I commercial fish some too as a real young guy. And I'm not a very good ocean person, even though I love doing that. But working in the woods was like the thing that I found like the key fit my lock.
yeah,
And that's true. A lot of people, and you get out and you get out early and you're done in the evening and you feel great and you're
yeah,
physically good. You're beat up, when you're old, but hey, that's kind of a goal, right?
yeah,
But I
yeah,
just was there is a way forward, and what I want to establish right here where we're at is you made up these talking points about the Tongass to kind of translate what we're talking about to a larger audience
yeah.
who may be in Florida,
Hmm.
right? Maybe maybe they know the Ocala National Forest or whatever, but um, we're talking about 17 million acres, largest national forest in the country, spread out over islands and sea, and a third of that is ice and
Yeah,
rock.
yeah. It's the place to see still. I mean,
Yeah,
right where I live, I've still got 2 feet of snow on the ground. There's a glacier a mile away, and that leads into 1,500 square miles of glaciers, which separates the coast from the inland. And then to the west is this, it's called Alexander Archipelago, but it's over 1,000 islands. So you kind of have the strip of mainland with glaciers on one side, and then to the west you have over 1,000 islands, rainforest islands.
gotcha. And and a third of the what I'm trying to translate to folks is like I told you that I had this guy, a friend of mine, he was from back east, and he
Yeah.
was telling me about Nevada, right?
Yeah.
He had been to Las Vegas, and he didn't think the Fed should own 73% of Nevada. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. And I said, have you ever been there? And he said, yeah, I've been to Las Vegas. And I was like, every piece of water in the state is privately owned.
Yeah.
And the rest of the state is either mountain or desert. It's unusable as a tax-paying piece of property.
Yeah.
That's why it's in federal hands. That's why it wasn't claimed during the multitude of homestead acts we enacted, right?
Mhm.
The same is true of the Tongass. Is like
Yeah.
you couldn't sell it or settle it. Like a third of it, what you were talking about is muskeg and that
Yeah. So a
country.
third is ice and rock, mostly ice, and then a third is what we call non-productive forests, which is basically muskeg, which maybe isn't fair to call it non-productive because it definitely serves a purpose.
Right.
And alder patches, and then a third of it is called productive forests, and within that, the productive forest is the most ecologically rich and the most coveted by timber interests. But within that third of the Tongass, there's only a small, most of all the really productive, large, old growth forest is already logged. It's already taken, and what remains is of that large diameter old growth forest is the most kind of ecologically rich, like vital winter deer, Sitka blacktail habitat, vital, salmon habitat, and that is what timber interests want the most. That's the last pork chop. And so even for me, like I'm not, I commercial fished. I've done a ton of bear guiding stuff, and so like I was telling you before we hopped on here, how there was a land transfer in one of the zones that I'm trying to help this village look into start developing bear viewing there. And this land transfer was like, it was going to be, it was going to be logged. And that's how private land works. You privatize it. It's going to be maximum quick profit most of the time. And so for me, it was really kind of like, it was really kind of upsetting because it was like right next to this zone where this village theoretically and bear hunting guides, they could do it together, but they can make money off this zone for generations by taking people there to see bears. In the past, I've been taken into logged out areas to assess, can we put a bear viewing area in there? And you just couldn't. I brought a bunch of people there, visitors, and it just doesn't work. Especially if you log down to the creeks, like, you destroy that salmon stream. If there's no salmon, there's not going to be bears there, and then you're not going to make money. But going back to this one zone that I was really like, oh man, that sucks. There's nothing you can do. But they had sent, and I looked at it, I was like, that, yeah, obviously they're going to log that. And then the timber cruisers went in there, and they said it's not productive enough for them to want to log, so they just left it. And so that's something to think of too. Is like when you see the Tongass, you see this huge green, mass, but not the forest has this different productivity level, and the big stuff is what they want.
The pickles.
They want the pickles and
Yeah. One of the things is I don't know. There's a lot to. I don't like unpacking it all, but it's like, are you familiar at all with? You may not be because you're younger, but Ketchikan pulp and all that was established as a Cold War concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. government needed to build a wall of population facing the Soviet threat.
Yeah.
And so this was a federally subsidized, taxpayer-subsidized concept from the beginning. And one of the things I've learned since this administration and whatnot is the depth of people's suspicion of government, which in my life, I always saw the national forest. I worked as a Forest Service contractor. The government was kind of working. They protected my deed and patents for innovation and stuff. And I never was as anti-government as people that I worked in the woods with.
Yeah.
They were like, the feds, Randy Weaver and Ruby Ridge, all of which was awful, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't have that same monolithic view of the terrible federal government. But when you read the history of the Tongass, the history of Southeast Alaska, and the federal government's involvement in subsidizing all of these things, you definitely get a cautionary tale about federal policy being co-opted for really bad ends.
Yeah.
And when they gave them, I would encourage anybody listening to this to just Google this up and look at the history. When they gave those monopolies to those timber companies, they kind of ensured a no accountability logging process from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, where the United States interest was not served there. How much of that was exported? It was
a ton of it went to China and Japan, Korea, like diapers, So it was wild. So.
I mean, it was wild.
Yeah.
And they were saying on one hand that the environmentalists were stopping them, and on the other hand, they were exporting. It was a colonial economy. The benefits were just not there.
Yeah, the environmentalists in Southeast Alaska in the 70s were bear hunting guides, wolf trappers. They were leading the charge because they were on the ground and they're seeing what was happening.
Right.
And I'm starting to see that again. I'm starting to see bear hunting guides being like, we need to step up because this is, I'm seeing more of that, the narrative that these big outside corporations and, love to push on environmentalists is like, they don't live here. They're out of touch, wacko leftists. And it's just like, in certain parts of history, and they love to point out like the crazy animal rights people and different things and stuff like that, but it's just like what I'm seeing now in my neck of the woods is more and more people who are doesn't fit that mold at all. Like these are people who hunt here, who fish here, who make their living here, and they're all like realizing that they could lose a lot if what happens with what we think is going to happen with the Tongass, or what administration would like to make happen with the Tongass happens. So,
and that's what I think it is, and part of the rescission of the Roadless Rule down here was folks like the Wyoming Republican guys, the congressmen, who they just want that taxpayer money to come back, right? Mm-hmm. Like they don't care if the timber's worth them. A below cost timber sale is fine. Yeah. They want that. They want to be subsidized again in their district.
Yeah.
And in a way, if it didn't have such a damage, and if they didn't leave the roads behind eroding into the only water that's in Wyoming, which is why all those mountains are federally owned, right? Was because they're the only water. They're the only watershed in the state. They make everything else possible. And then, of course, there's a lot of people who would like to own that as well.
Yeah.
Right. Like if they owned all that watershed, they would be able to make everybody dance to whatever tune they want to play down there in the sagebrush. So there's that element as well. Yeah. But what I saw in the Tongass was they simply wanted to get back to spending taxpayer money to subsidize private enterprise. And
yeah, I mean, that's just nuts.
So. Yeah, that's hard. I hear your chickens.
Yeah.
Is something getting them?
That sounds more like arguing over laying eggs. We did have we had a half white raven come in. I've never seen anything like it here yesterday. So,
wow.
But, no, that doesn't sound like they're getting got. But
okay. Do you have a lot of predators on the chickens other than the ravens?
Gosh, I mean, I just put I mean, I have so much snow in my yard, but I let them free range during the day, but I just put the electric fence up yesterday. And yeah, we do have a bear that we've had to teach a few lessons. But it hasn't messed with the chicken since for a while, you know.
Yeah.
But the bear breaks in comes into our yard at least a handful of times.
So it's April 22nd as we're recording this. And what's your weather? What's your conditions there?
So this is one more reason. One more reason to talk about the importance of big trees and the winter habitat for Sitka blacktails. We broke an all-time record for snowfall this year in northern Southeast Alaska. And so, I got 2 feet of snow in my yard. Last couple winters before that were really mild, and I had a lot of deer around. And the mainland always has less deer than the archipelago. But we had a huntable population of deer around here, and they all died this winter here.
Gotcha.
And so throughout Southeast Alaska, it's unclear what every zone's different. But I'm pretty sure, so our last big winter, 2007, I bet we lost 75% of our deer. And so this winter, different people are reporting different things. I was hoping to head over to Alberti Island tomorrow, but I don't think I will, and look for deer kills. But I'm not expecting an easy hunting season, this year. So,
did they adjust the tags?
I don't think they will this season. But if I don't think they will, and I don't think it needs to be adjusted really for up here. But yeah, I mean, so it's the zone I hunt has the most tags available, and there are a lot of deer. It's just it's last few years. But we'll see. There's some areas like, Prince of Wales Island, if they got hit with what we got, I don't know if their deer wouldn't come back in our lifetime,
right,
if they had the winter that we had here. And that's definitely a possibility. So it's like, that's, and when you consider that Sitka blacktail deer is by far the most important meat in this whole region, southeast, the Tongass National Forest, they need to be prioritized, as far as land management decisions. And that is a big part of that is, one, protecting our remaining good old growth forest habitat, and two, doing, that mutually beneficial restoration logging that would provide wood product for a lot of different smaller mills, local mills,
Right. So I think that's a good place to get here. So in the aftermath of the logging boom, it kind of came down in the 90s to the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the companies just walked away. Yeah. And one of the things I've got to get with Jim Beistal. Mm-hmm. He's working on the Blacktail Deer Foundation initiative. But what we need is extensive thinning of those thickets that came back. Can you talk about that a little bit and why that affects the blacktail and the Sitka?
Yeah,
I'm using those. By the way, I'm using those interchangeably. Is that right?
What's that, Sitka blacktail or?
Yeah, blacktail and Sitka. Is it the same?
Blacktail, I don't know. We're not too picky about labels up here. So I think it's been really interesting to kind of see this awareness rise in people, but because initially, like when you clear cut a zone, you have all this blueberry bushes pop up. So you had a lot of these guys, especially like on Prince of Wales, these hunters who love deer as much as anyone, were like, man, these clear cuts are good because all this blueberry bushes come up. The deer population really explodes for a short while. And I saw this when I was a kid over on Chichikov Island, where they logged a ton, and all of a sudden, everyone was getting on the ferry to go from different communities, and they go hunt the logging roads, and there were deer everywhere. It makes you feel like you're a good hunter. So those blueberry bushes initially on a clear cut can, provide a lot of food for these Sitka blacktails, assuming, and the population can grow, assuming you don't get that big winter right afterwards.
Because they don't have security cover, right?
You need that. You need those big branches to to provide a buffer from snowfall. But then after a while, whatever, 30, 40 years, you have these spruce grow up, and it's called stem exclusion, where they grow up so tightly, so close together that they blot out all the sunlight, and then there's no understory. There's nothing for these deer to eat. And that's the problem, unless you just kept blasting areas, clear cutting, just try to make more blueberry bushes and understory, which is impossible and not profitable. It's way economically makes absolutely no sense, makes less sense than, clear cutting a zone in the first place. You end up having it's a dead forest. It's a dead, and that can go on in Southeast Alaska because we're colder. That can go on for 150 years before you'll have a return to a productive forest. And there's a lot of people who know way more about this than me. I listen to them, and then I can say what I've seen too in these log zones. And then, so if, a lot of a lot of different groups of people, including the Sitka Blacktail Foundation and Sea Alaska, and, I think even backcountry hunters and anglers might be helping out, but there's this huge collaboration, tribes to go into these areas that are just entering, about to enter stem exclusion, or have, but they're not too old, or they're the right age, but just basically, there's been thinning projects in the past, but it's been all commercial thinning where you don't get the slash out. So you can have slash 10 feet tall, but basically there's this huge push to go in and thin in a way that would help wildlife habitat, would help that, you get those bushes to come up, you get some sunlight in there. And I think it is important. I think it's a great step forward. I think it's a great way to employ local people, but I do also want to make clear that, that is one part of what we should be doing. And the other part is that we absolutely need to do our best to protect our last large old growth tree forests. That wintering habitat is this winter cannot make it more clear how important it is for us to have that. And, so yeah, it's great. Let's get restoration work done, but ultimately too, it's we got to protect the big old growth. So,
right. Yeah. I think that y'all can't burn there, right? It doesn't carry fire.
Be pretty rare, but things have been so weird lately with the weather. Who knows? And I guess the other thing I should say too is I'm not opposed to cutting a big old growth tree down. I'm not opposed to selective logging. I'm just opposed to and I think pretty much everyone I know is opposed to just going and clear cutting these areas versus talking to loggers who are totally for. They don't want the roadless rule to be rescinded, but they're if you take one big tree out of a zone of every 3 trees, that opens up, the canopy a little more light. So it's you can do that, but it's it just has to be, forest management has to be carried forward really carefully. And like I said earlier, I've been really impressed with a lot of the employees with the Forest Service I've talked to in the past. A lot of them lost their jobs, like I said. But they understood that. They listened to all the comments, they listened to all the science, and they're doing their best to do the right path forward. But what we see again is this administration is very likely just going to drop a bomb on all that. So
well, they've defunded it too. And when they use the Congressional Review Act to overturn the mining ban on the Superior National Forest in Minnesota, so they're obviously what really affected me in that one, because I thought it was pretty predictable, right? Mm-hmm. They had a Chilean company that wanted to pay money to take the resources under the 1872 Mining Act and just basically colonialize our country.
Yeah.
But that's not really, people do that. Yeah. What amazed me was using the Congressional Review Act in that way, because it's so dangerous to dismantle, to use such, that's a hammer, That's
Yeah.
a big sledgehammer. And I don't think that future administrations will do that. I think we're going to limit those kind of actions. I think we've been shown the Achilles heels right here about how the United States of America actually works.
I think that's very true. I think we're seeing, I mean, that, if nothing else, that maybe could be a way that we could build back better. I don't know.
Build back better. I do see that. Now we have to navigate through some very stormy waters on our way to that place.
Yeah.
And we have to build some unity that we have been complacent about before, and I think that's good too. Nobody wishes for these kind of storms, right?
No.
But they do show you where the roof is leaking.
Yeah. And, I mean, I think the thing is you hang on and you just keep on going. And the thing about these storms too is like so much of it's more of a posturing act than anything. And you can't back down.
Right. So, yeah. It's a bluff charge.
Yeah.
Some of it is a bluff charge for sure. And as we've been saying, they've been throwing so much into the fan that, the idea is that they will overwhelm the opposition.
Yeah.
It's like in chess, they call that a pawn storm, right? Like they just throw all the pawns in one direction at you, and but that doesn't work. That's not what a grandmaster plays.
No, it's thinking about the future of the Tongass too, and it's like if you just throw a bomb at it versus taking a collaborative approach, like the tribes in the Alaska, if you're not working with the tribes in the Alaska Native corporations, I mean, they're not going to work with you, and it's going to be this, ultimately the administration is just going to completely lose if they're not taking a collaborative approach.
Right.
They're going to lose big, and it's,
One of the things I think is interesting in the Tongass, it's not like, say, the Bankhead National Forest of Alabama, right? Mm-hmm. Is nobody actually really wants to own the Tongass. They just want to cut, right? The product.
I mean, I think owning it would be, they want the milk, they don't want the goat.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
the people who live here, like, definitely that's, it's a different perspective. It's a working forest. It's the people's forest. And I think being raised that way for me, it's just like, it just kind of like when I go other places, I feel so disoriented.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not used to not being able to go walk in the woods or, go gather food. It's like, to me, it's second nature.
I want to get a vision for the future here from a local, but let's talk a little bit about, because this economy we're talking about creating, you and I talked about before I hit the button. Mm-hmm. We were talking about when we're commercial fishing, which I've done too, mm-hmm. the animal, the creature becomes a product, right? Yeah. And you go like, man, I didn't even enough pay to cover my fuel today. Yeah. And to some extent, when I meat hunt, my kids brought me back from this. They said, "You're so intent on getting this meat that you're ruining all the hunting for us." Mm-hmm. And I got it. Yeah. And I tried to stop doing that. Right.
Yeah.
But will you talk about a little bit when you're subsistence hunting or fishing for your family or gathering, it's so different from harvesting for your living and how you get blinded by. We were talking about that. It was so interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, like there's a part of me that wants to get I got these two little boys and like, man, I kind of want to do it. I want to kind of like go back to start doing a little more commercial fishing again. And I was thinking back to like how there's so many parts of that lifestyle that I loved, but then the one part that I really didn't love was that, you end up thinking of animals in just purely a kind of a monetary way or a nuisance way. Like I was looking at my kids put a sticker of a lingcod up on the wall, and I was just remembering all the lingcod that I released. I was annoyed to like have to have a moment to release the lingcod. And I'm looking at the picture and like, man, that is amazing, beautiful fish.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like all the coho salmon that I would look at and I'd be like, okay, you're worth $5. You're worth, you're a dink, you're gonna be worth $1.50. And and then it'd be like, oh, I only caught 50 today. That's not enough. I didn't make any money. That, and it's just, and like, sometimes like I never made a lot of money commercial fishing. Like it was barely any, I got to eat good food. But I hated that, having that perspective on these amazing fish, where it's just like, you look at them as money. And now, going out, catching our cohos or whatever, like every fish is like such a gift and so beautiful. And it's just so much nicer for me. And I'm not knocking commercial fishing at all, but it's just like,
No.
I'm just saying my personal thing. And it's just like, I just really appreciate so much more for me being like, I got this fish, maybe I'll smoke and can it. Maybe we'll just, freezer pack it. But it's just, to me, it's just like, it's just worth so much more to me than when I was commercial fishing. And then, you're stressed out because you're not making money. And the big one for me, we didn't talk about this earlier, was pink salmon, trolling where I'd release 500 pinks a day, or, long lining, you're just cutting, or crabbing and you're cutting all these pink salmon up for bait. And then you're just kind of talking to, poorly of them because they're, one, you're not making money off them. Two, it's a bait fish. And, and I found myself, in my early 20s and going up, just being like, you just learn to, with some people, you're just like, you just start talking like how poorly about pink salmon. And then I got it. I just kind of happened to get offered a job doing this bear viewing stuff that turned into guiding a lot of wildlife film stuff. But all of a sudden it was like, pink salmon, we'd have a year when the pink salmon didn't show up. And they're like, well, shit, there's no bears on the stream. This affects the whole ecosystem. And like the whole foundation of Southeast Alaska's ecosystem is, or significant, or the majority of it, it's like, it's the backbone's pink salmon in these streams, and that's everything. And so I was like this little punk kid, could talking poorly of the salmon because I was annoyed to release 500 of them a day. Then the next, I remember going out for the next season and it was like, there was no pink salmon in the ocean. There's none, and then
Right.
I transitioned from doing an opener to go do bear work, and there's no pink salmon in the streams. And you're just like, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, what have I, you're just so blind. And you go into a village and like, and we all talk about how much we like to eat pink salmon now, and it's like, it's not my favorite,
Right.
but it's so invaluable. And it's just
Yeah.
like, I'm never going to say a bad thing about a pink salmon again in my life. Like, and that was kind of a shocker for me to be like, all of a sudden there weren't pinks. And I was like, we're screwed. We're screwed.
Yeah. One of the finest days of fly fishing I ever did was fishing for pinks, and just for fun.
Yeah.
And I remember if you reach above the cork of your like regular, like lighter weight, six weight, say, and touch that rod, it breaks. Right? They're so powerful.
Yeah.
And you just like, I learned so much about fighting big fish on medium tackle, and just around Juneau,
Yeah.
fishing for pinks. And people thought nobody lived there was down there. Well, there were a few people. Yeah.
And I very much appreciate them, but our food's still coho and sockeye and
yeah. Well, just like our preferred whitetails are basic.
Yeah.
And elk are our coho.
Yeah.
Cool. But let's talk about a vision. I was going to tell you, I worked at a fish house one time on the Outer Banks, and everything that wasn't going straight to the restaurants and markets was going for crab bait, 8 cents a pound, truckloads of bycatch.
Yeah.
And I could go through that and take whatever I wanted. So we ate all kind of strange like stuff that was really good, right? Yeah. We're constantly coming up with new stuff, but seeing that 8 cents a pound crab bait going out, all of these incredibly beautiful, sentient croakers, and
Yeah.
they're not the poison puffer. We call them chicken of the sea. I can't remember what the actual fish is, but they blow up. They inflate themselves, but they're not spiny. They're not the famous puffer. And those were thousands of them.
Mm-hmm.
They were just in the way.
Yeah.
And I just I never got over that. I just there's something that and that's true of my friend who logged in the Tongass during the heyday.
Mm-hmm.
They also felt that way about it. At times you would wake up and go, holy smokes, look at what we're doing here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, some big time fallers were getting paid by the board foot.
Yeah.
And he said I would take my 100-foot, tape, and I would go around that log, and it was just like King Midas counting his money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this blindness, and I'm not immune to it either. I worked on commercial boats and saw swordfish is by the pound, right? How many pounds you cut his bill off with a hacksaw?
Yeah.
Throw him on the deck and butcher him like a hog.
Yeah.
One of the most impressive creatures on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it comes down to we get kind of blind when whatever we get stuck in whatever industry we're working in. But I guess the other thing for me at least was that was how I made money. I had to have money. I didn't make a lot, but still that's how I was surviving. And when we think of kind of a future vision of the Tongass, conservation is only going to work if it works for the economy and for the people. And so locals have to be able to make a living. And obviously everything we just talked about now, going in and clear cutting the last of our old growth is going to hurt the economy, the overall economy, our economy, not, foreign interest economy. There's a few people, very select, tiny, decimal of a percentage of people who will benefit short term in Southeast Alaska if we go big on old growth again. But overall, we're all going to suffer on our lifestyle and our economy. So I think the vision that I would like to see for the Tongass is just a lot of the work that people have been doing is just trying to do kind of industries that are more sustainable. I know that's kind of a dirty word for some people, but just basically, let's log in a way that is going to provide wood product for local mills, help folks out. We have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of acres that already have roads in that we're going to be able to access. And we just need to do it in a way that we can make, different user groups, especially tribes, happy if they want to do it in a restoration work that will help wildlife. We need to do that. And that's a fantastic, why not? Let's do it that way.
So I have a question about that. So do you need a new mill that can handle smaller diameter wood?
From talking to some old loggers were I think there's going to be need for some new mills, but they're also, 7-8 years ago, I remember having this conversation. They're we're almost there for a diameter size on a lot of this second
Gotcha.
for the mills. So some, I don't have the right answer there. But the other thing I'd like to see is just more, just protection on our salmon streams. And that's the big one is we got, we got to protect the riparian zones, the buffer zones. We can't log down to the streams. And that's still happening, I believe, on some of this privately owned land. 1990, there was an act that said you can't log down to the edge of the streams anymore, which was that act in itself was incredible what that did for these different salmon streams. But man, a big thing I would like to see is there's a lot of villages that aren't commercial fishing anymore because it's limited entry permitting and they don't have permits. Maybe grandpa sold their permit years ago. Now, so I would like to see just more, prioritize salmon, and get these villages, try to help these villages have a fishing industry again. A number of them really need it. And that's one thing that just personally I'd like to see. But we kind of talked about it before too, is that, whether you like it or not, the writing is on the wall that the Tongass in Alaska is only going to have more and more tourists coming here.
Right.
And the one thing, there's nothing, it's the tide, it's like the tide of the ocean. It's coming in, and we, good or bad, regardless, we need to manage this land and these waters in a way that, no one comes here to see big clear cuts. People come here, and it's not, I don't, there's a lot of people who come to Alaska, just lifelong dream, and they want to catch a salmon, they want to see a bear. And I think that's invaluable. Like, I try not to, the more and more, the older I get, the more and more I realize, like, that is something that is so precious, and that's something that we need to manage the Tongass for the future, is that people can have these opportunities to come see bears, come go hunting, come go fishing. And that's all goes back to, managing the land in a responsible way. So,
right. In a way that doesn't externalize the costs and privatize the profits.
Yeah.
And that doesn't prioritize one extractive economy over everything else.
Yeah, that's so impacting. It's like one thing, if a bear hunter, if a hunting guide takes a bear out of a stream, like that's, or takes two bears out of a watershed, that's so much less impactful than honestly, having like a bunch of people walking around there all summer. Like, that's way more stress on the population than taking a couple of bears out of there. Let alone then, you think about cutting the zone versus having, and ultimately in the long run, that bear hunting guide's going to make more money, provide more for the local economy than, and you also have multi-use. We have even our hunting season set up in a way that's like, you can hunt a lot of these watersheds for brown bears, and then you could come in afterwards. And like, this pisses some people off, but it's like, you got to take a bigger, more holistic view on this. But the season ends for brown bears in the spring, generally before at least a significant population of the sows are down from the mountain out of their dens. And, you come in after that, and you can do bear viewing there. It's not going to be the up close katmai stuff, but it's like, we have this huge opportunity for, these different industries that can coexist. And sure, there's going to be friction. Sure, people are going to be pissed off. It's never going to be perfect, but it's going to be a hell of a lot better than just,
one and done.
One and done. We can't do that anymore.
Yeah. So. I think it's great to think about that. I always, when we were talking yesterday, I'm suspicious of tourism because of what it's done to where I live, where my kids, are kind of priced out. But tourism is the interest on the principle of well-managed land.
It is. And we got no choice here. Like, there's nothing you can do. It's coming, and so the best you can do is try to, like, do planning in a way that does not hurt the locals. So, well,
I was thinking that local food security, by conservation stewardship of that landscape. So then if you had the tourists, then they could do local food as well, right? Mm-hmm. So there's less, there's more self-sufficiency at base. Mm-hmm. And I just, I don't know. I know y'all are all working on this, and I know you're kind of like right in the middle of it because you don't have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming whether you like it or not. Just how you deal with it. I mean, I think the worst thing you can do is just give up. There's all this stuff, and it's like, you just gotta try to stay aware, and there's so much noise that you can get lost in. And that's part of the tactics, is just kind of
keep throwing it at you.
But you just kind of remember, like, what do you value? And I think that's the thing to ask. Like, what do you value? If you're a hunter and fisherman, what do you value?
Right.
And just stick to that, because I guarantee you this administration does not value, if you really want a future hunting and fishing, it does not value what you value.
It's not in there. Right. It's like, and it's, it's good to, I believe that iron sharpens iron. And it's good to be challenged and even attacked at times, as long as you can hold your own and fight back and have a chance to win, right?
Yeah.
But I do think, well, we talked about this. I think we're gonna prevail here due to the kind of ham-handedness of the opponent.
Yeah, I mean, the Tongass, like from what I know, from what I've seen and what I know with, so many people who love this place and care so deeply, they're going to have to be really careful because, I mean, there's people who are way more fired up than I am,
Right.
and it's a lot of the indigenous people who live here. It's like, yeah, they know the right path forward and they are not gonna,
Right.
some of them are just, yeah, I mean, this is, I mean, last time the Roadless Rule was rescinded, or, they were going in for Alaska here for the Tongass, first Trump administration, like seeing how a lot of people rose up, like it was full on, like they're ready to go to war,
Yeah.
and that gives me a lot of heart, that's like, you go into a village, or like I said, it's like the value of these wild foods. It's just connected to everything from the community to what they enjoy doing, what we enjoy doing, and also just like it's just the ultimate. Having that is your health. Not having it is just disease. So
yeah, that's a great place right there. So Bjorn, I know I want to get back with you. And some of your explorations are walking in the Brooks Range and all of that country. It's just I had so much fun learning about that from you.
Oh, cool, thanks.
And I just I know I'm going to let you go, and keep something in the well here. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Hal.
And I'll carry on. I'll need your help on the rest of the Alaska deep dive.
I'm glad to.
This has been awesome though. What are you doing today?
Oh, I gotta write an article about the Tongass for a publication. About Sitka blacktail needs and habitat. So that's what I'm doing, and still, if the marine forecast is good tomorrow, I might take the older boy out, skip school and head over to Almaty and see if there's any birds hooting down low. So
gotcha. And you have what kind of boat do you run?
Oh, I got a sea dory.
I just and that whole lifestyle is I got to experience some of that when I was there, and I've been envious ever since. I kind of I hit Montana and stopped, 35 years ago, and it's when you live in places like Southeast or Montana, it can become kind of over. That's your whole life.
It's the center of the universe, man.
Center of the universe, yeah. Right. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much. Leave people with how to find your work if they want to read more from Bjorn Dihle.
I mean, you can just Google my name if you want. I don't have a website or anything. I just work enough to try to get outside.
I hear you, man. All right, Bjorn, thank you so much.
All right, take care.
See ya.
We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. We shall not be moved.
I want to thank Dan and Claudia Zanes for so graciously letting us use their beautiful version of We Shall Not Be Moved for the introduction of this podcast. Thank you, Dan and Claudia.